I'll let you know a little bit about myself. Thank you for that introduction. I appreciate that. But let's go back to my roots. I'm a farm girl. I grew up in central Idaho on a small ranch, town of 3,000 people, lived 10 miles outside of town. So I was a ranch hand, right? That's what happens when you're a small kid on a ranch, is that you end up helping with all the responsibilities on the farm. My brother and I were the ranch hands. We helped with harvest and hay season, and that was our summer jobs and our school jobs. Getting up and feeding the cows before we go. All of that is my background. But what that taught me a lot of lessons. It taught me some really important lessons about responsibility and hard work and being a part of a family and being an interconnected unit to help the farm, to help the business. And my parents are both successful entrepreneurs in their own right. My mom's a real estate agent, dad's a farmer, both very successful, did very well for themselves, and they set a really good example for me growing up. I also had a brother. My brother did the same things, but we were always pushed, and not pushed, but we were given opportunities, pushed to be involved with the community, pushed to be involved with our school, and to do lots of activities. So we didn't only have life on the farm. We had life outside of the farm too. So I got into these activities. I got very comfortable in school activities, doing activities like speech and debate, and I was in a lot of youth leadership, 4-H, did a lot of speaking when I was younger, and that kind of paved the path for what ended up being my career. It was the end of my junior year of high school, and I was getting ready to go to college. I had just applied to colleges. I was getting ready I just returned from the state debate tournament. I won the state debate tournament my junior year of high school in Idaho, go tiny little state of Idaho, but at least I can claim that. But just returned from that, getting ready for a summer of hay season and harvest season and helping out on the farm, and my life literally stopped in its tracks. I was the night before graduation, my junior year of high school, and I was driving into the awards ceremony to present because my friends that were seniors were graduating, and a large farm truck that was driving down the road, a gravel road 10 miles outside of town I grew up in, hit me broadside. And my little Ford Ranger, if you can see a little truck Ford Ranger, was lifted up off of the road and into a dirt field, and I was thrown into a coma. The first half of the summer was spent in the hospital. So I was in a coma for 16 days. I don't remember the coma. I don't remember that happening, but there was really interesting stories. I was in and out of intensive care for those 16 days. On day 10, I started to respond when the nurse would ask me to squeeze her finger, but I was still unconscious. I still didn't know what was going on. I don't remember any of this, by the way, either. I'm told all this by my mom and dad and friends. But day 16, there was a glimmer of hope. My family was all around me. My mom and dad by my side. My mom was with me for the entire time I was in the hospital. And my brother, 2 years younger than me, freshman in high school at the time, was on the other side of the room throwing a stress ball against the wall. You know those squeezy stress balls? Of course, my mom had one. Throwing it against the wall. And I opened my eyes and I said, "Sean, you're really starting to piss me off." The first thing I said in 2.5 weeks. And so there was some laughter and some tears and joy that I'd actually regained a consciousness, and that even showed a little bit of my personality in there. My brother, to this day, I still talk to him about that. It was really fun about how that happened. So there was a glimmer of hope. I was very, very fortunate. I spent 4 weeks in intensive rehab center, was very fortunate to come out of all of those things. But it was interesting. I had to relearn everything. I had to relearn how to swallow. I had to relearn how to feed myself. I had to relearn how to walk. And these simple tasks that we do every day, you don't think about having to consciously put one foot in front of the other. And that was really a challenge. However, gosh, we're at 10 minutes and I'm not even on page 1.
You're 5 minutes, you got 10 minutes.
Okay. Whew. So it's very fresh in my mind. But very, very fortunately, after I got out of it, I was let go from the hospital 4 weeks later with a prescription for some physical rehabilitation and strength building in the summer. And, when school came around at the end of August in the fall, I probably wasn't ready to go back. But my parents were very fervently pushed me forward to do it. They wanted me to get back into the activities, to do the things that I was doing, to exercise my brain, and to be in a space where I could flourish again. There was no question that my dad had that I was going to go to college the next year, even though I had been through this experience in the summer. And so I just did it. I went through the motions. I was not operating at 100%, but I could go back to the classes. I was in all the AP classes. I went back to most of my activities, not all the sports activities. I was not an athlete. I was more of a debate elite. That's what I did. Got back into speaking, got back into debate, got back into student leadership, did all those things, and graduated my senior year. Salutatorian, third place at state debate that year, but I was able to come back. And one thing that we discovered as I was getting ready to go to college is that I did what we thought was impossible a year earlier when I was in college. So I went to college. I went to Carroll College in Helena, Montana, and I was a communication studies major, and I also was a participant on their nationally competitive debate team. And I wasn't the most competitive person, but I was surrounded by the most incredible talent that I've ever been around in my entire life, just on the team. But then we're also part of this big national and even global circuit of collegiate debaters, and the debaters and the coaches were all just so smart, and it was so great to be in that. And it was an amazing way. In hindsight, I wasn't fully recovered when I started that. I felt about 3 years when the light kind of went on, and I felt like all the synapses were firing again. But being on the debate team was a significant part of that. We were national champions, 1999, Carroll College, a little college in Montana. That was pretty exciting. I know. That paved the way for me to want to pay back to that community, because it had been a space in my recovery, because I had this community, because it had transformed a part of my life. So paved my way to being a professor and a college debate coach for the past 20 years. And which is something that I give back, and I love teaching. I love speaking, being in front of an audience. You all know that I've been speaking all of my life, and I love being in front of an audience, an engaging room. I told Ira to give me some time signals because I can speak a long time. But it's so great to be there, and so amazing to be teaching and transforming lives of others like you all do in your businesses. It's really amazing to do that. But I felt trapped. I wasn't fulfilled. Does anybody have that experience? You climb these levels of success, and you do the administration. Julie just talked about this. You do administration, you do all the things, and you're just unfulfilled. So when we climb that ladder of success and we're in that silo, and we're not really feeling the fulfillment that we want to fulfill. And I felt so torn because I love teaching and I love being in that space. But then there was something on the other side of it that said, I want something more. And this, that spurred me to head into entrepreneurship. And what I felt was I was in a silo of success. You climb up the ladder and you're influencing inside an industry, but you're not influencing outside of that industry where your genius is really intended for. So I stepped outside and started my path of entrepreneurship. And a short 3 years later, I have been in many, many companies. I'm CEO and vice president, CEO of 2 companies, and I'm vice president of a global consulting council with Will Black here and the Strategic Advisor Board. And it's been a pretty amazing journey. That'll take another, 50 minutes for me to get that whole story. But in a blur, all of that happened, and it was amazing, and it's a lot of fun. But I learned a lot of things learned many lessons along the way that I think are going to resonate with a lot of you. The first one is that your intuition and your core genius is what is key for monetization. When you understand what your core is and what your core strength is and what transformation you can inspire, that's key. That's the business key that we have to be able to monetize and create a business around it. That's your genius. When you operate in your genius, that's your genius space. Things are easier, you're more passionate about things, you want to do those things, you want to do things that you love, and you want to do things that you can inspire you to move forward, and you can transform other people. That's your key to monetization. What I learned is that your success in an industry is not your genius. Your genius is outside of that, and it's not something that's articulated by your industry. Industry changes your genius, but it doesn't have to define your genius. So your genius and your intuition is core to your strengths and core to who you are. And I think that's really key to think about, and that you have these skills that are not defined by the military, the industry, whatever space that you're in, because they're core to you. And you can use that genius in any space you want. It's just interesting to think about. And it kind of gets into my second lesson that I learned, in that expectations that surround that behavior it changes the way that we express our genius, if that's a right expression. I'll tell you a story about how, I've been a professor for many, many years. I'm used to putting together lectures that are 45 to 60 minutes long. I'm used to engaging a room and having activity sheets and all of those things. I'm used to doing that. That's how I operate. So this 15-minute thing is challenging for me, but I'm used to doing that. I learned a really tough lesson when I stepped into entrepreneurship. I was going to the biz-to-biz meetings. I was going to the Chamber of Commerce meetings. They all wanted to hear about the business communication knowledge I had. They all wanted to be educated about that. But the way that I talked to those groups was completely different than the way that I lectured to a class. I just had them write down information. I'm not the kind of person that uses a lot of PowerPoints, because I kind of like the attention to be on me. And so I write on the board, and I do a lot of those things. I didn't even really get a PowerPoint to Josh nearly in time to be able to have this here, so you just got to listen to me. But that's, you can't teach in the same way. I was teaching those same concepts that were my genius, that are my genius, and I just had to adapt it to that new audience. Genius entrepreneurship, right? You take your genius, what we all do in our own businesses, and transfer that knowledge to other people. And there is a method to do that. There is a way to do that where you can still stay true and core to your genius, but transfer to a different audience. That's another key to monetization that I talk about a lot in the book. But it's something that's personal to us. It's not defined by our industry, and we can share that genius in many other places. Second lesson I learned is that comfort and success can trap you. It can be comfortable to be in a space. We are in a space. We're scared to leave that space. I've been in academia for 17 years, and I'm still there half time. I have my own businesses on the side. But it's hard for me to leave that. It's hard for me to leave something that I love. And I think many of us deal with that we are trapped in that space that we love, but then we limit our growth. And so thinking about ways to use your genius outside of that space is really important. And I challenge you to do that, to think about what kind of impact you can make. Gosh, I have a minute left, and I have a really important one to talk about. I'm going to talk about it anyway. The third and most important thing I learned was about expectations in this journey, and expectations about gender. And I speak about this a lot in the collegiate level. I've written a few papers on it, what have you, but that's not really important. But there's expectations of gender that are challenging for women in leadership. Read this great book in college. It's called Beyond the Double Bind by Kathleen Hall Jamieson. And not only do industry standards define what is appropriate for leadership, but what communication habits are appropriate for leadership that are very masculine habits and feminine habits. And when female leaders show more masculine communication styles, being direct, being argumentative, being concise, being in control, which tend to be more masculine communication habits, Has anybody experienced this before? Yeah. What are we determined to be?
Lawyer.
Yeah. Some very unattractive labels come from that, right? So we are determined to not be feminine because we're not feminine in our communication style. Trust me, I've been in a very masculine-dominated industry like many of you in the military, in law, in media. College debate, maybe 30% of college debaters are females, and probably less than 10% of the directors are female. And so it's a male, same thing with administration and academia. Male-dominated, where women that are in leadership roles are then criticized for using those leadership communication styles that we find to be definable as communication styles. The double bind, really interesting theory. And I imagine all of you have experienced something like that in your leadership. Men too. I'm not trying to be exclusive towards women. But it happens that there's a double bind for males too that have more feminine communication styles. So there's that double bind there when we're in leadership, when we have these ideas and we step into that space, that becomes challenging. So, my lessons of stepping into entrepreneurship, my call to you is to not let the industry that you're in define your success and define your genius. Your genius is core to you. Keep that and use that genius to influence and transform others. That's my call to you. There's time to step into your genius and to really transform the lives of other people. And you can do that because it's all personal to you and it's not defined by career expectations, not defined by your gendered expectations. It's core to your genius. Thank you.